He thought women were dumb. He tried the wrong one. The woman he brought to destroy his wife turned out to be her protector. And girl, when I tell you what she did to him, you will scream, women supporting women. Emily still remembered the day Felix asked her to marry him. It was 6 years ago under the evening sky at Bar Beach in Lagos. The ocean had whispered secrets to the sand. Felix held her hand and promised her forever. He promised her peace. He promised her a home where love would grow like flowers after rain. She believed him. They moved into a small bungalow on the island. Yellow walls, green curtains, a little kitchen where Emily hummed while she cooked. In the beginning, Felix smiled more. He kissed her forehead before leaving for work. He called her my queen. But slowly, like dust gathering on furniture, things began to change. First, it was small complaints. The food was too salty. Her voice was too loud. She laughed too much with neighbors. Then the complaints grew bigger, sharper, colder. "You don't respect me," he would say, even when she had done nothing wrong. Emily tried harder. She woke earlier, cooked better, spoke softer, but nothing was ever enough. Felix complained about everything, yet Emily overlooked his excesses. She told herself marriage required patience. She told herself love meant sacrifice. What she didn't tell herself was the truth, that she was slowly disappearing. One Thursday evening after Emily served dinner, Felix didn't touch his plate. He just stared at her. His eyes were cold, empty, like looking into a well with no water. "Emily," he said slowly, "I've made a decision." Her heart began to pound. Something in his voice felt wrong, like the air before thunder. "What decision?" she asked. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded across his chest. "I'm taking a second wife." The words hit her like a slap. Emily's breath stopped. The room tilted. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. What did you say?" "You heard me." His voice was calm. "I'm bringing another woman into this house." "But why?" "What have I done?" Felix smiled, not a kind smile, a smile that enjoyed her pain. "You need to learn respect," he said. "Maybe when another woman comes into this house, you will know you are not the only one. Maybe then you will sit up." Emily felt her chest tighten, her throat burned. Tears pushed behind her eyes, begging to fall, but she refused to cry in front of him. She would not give him that satisfaction. "Is that all?" she whispered. Felix waved his hand like he was dismissing a house help. "Yes, that's all." Emily stood up slowly. Her legs felt like water. She walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and locked it. Then she broke. She cried until her body shook. She cried until her throat hurt. She cried until there were no more tears left. She stared at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her face looked tired, worn out. "Why?" she whispered to her reflection. "What did I do to deserve this?" The mirror had no answer. She thought about their 6 years together, the promises, the dreams, the nights she had held him when he was sad, the mornings she had prayed for him, the meals she had cooked with love. And this was her reward? Emily splashed cold water on her face. She took a deep breath, then another, and another. Then she spoke to herself, out loud, firmly. "Emily, listen to me. If marrying another wife is his way of punishing you, let him go ahead." Her voice grew stronger. "I only pity the woman he will bring into this house. I wonder if she will last after seeing his true behavior." Something shifted inside her. Not anger, not bitterness, something harder, something like steel. She dried her face, fixed her dress, opened the bathroom door. Felix was still sitting in the parlor, watching television like he had just told her about the weather. Emily walked past him without a word. She went to the bedroom, lay down, and stared at the ceiling. She did not beg him. She did not cry again. She simply waited. 3 months passed like slow-moving clouds. Felix went ahead with his plan. He found a woman, paid her bride price, did the introduction with her family. Emily was not invited. She heard about it from neighbors, from whispers at the market, from pitying looks at church. "Sorry, oh, Emily, we heard your husband married another wife." Emily smiled politely. "It's okay. God knows best." Inside, she felt nothing. She had cried all her tears already. Now she was just empty, waiting to see what would happen next. Then one Saturday afternoon, a car pulled up in front of their bungalow. Emily was in the kitchen washing plates. She heard Felix's voice, then another voice, a woman's voice, young, soft. Her hand stopped moving in the soapy water. The front door opened. "Emily!" Felix called out. His voice was loud, proud, like a man showing off a new car. Emily dried her hands slowly. She wrapped her head tie properly. She took a deep breath. Then she walked into the parlor. Felix stood there with a woman beside him. She was younger than Emily, maybe 25. Smooth skin, bright eyes, a yellow dress that looked new. "Emily," Felix said with a wide smile, "meet my new wife, Sandra." He turned to the young woman. "Sandra, this is my first wife." Emily waited for the insult, the disrespect, the competition. But Sandra did something unexpected. She stepped forward, smiled gently, and knelt slightly in greeting. "Good afternoon, Ma," Sandra said softly. "I'm Sandra. It's nice to meet you." Emily blinked, shocked. Felix's smile vanished. His face went red. His jaw tightened. This was not what he expected. This was not the plan. Emily looked at Sandra, at her respectful eyes, at her gentle smile, and for the first time in months, Emily felt something other than emptiness. She felt curious. "Welcome," Emily said quietly. "Welcome to this house." Sandra smiled wider. Felix said nothing, but his hands, Emily noticed, were shaking. The first week was silent. Sandra moved into the second bedroom. Felix had prepared it specially. New curtains, new bed sheets, everything bright and new, like he was trying to prove a point. Emily watched from a distance. She cooked, she cleaned, she said good morning and good night. But she built a wall around her heart. She expected fights. She expected jealousy. She expected Sandra to parade around the house like a queen, reminding Emily that she was no longer enough. But Sandra did none of those things. Instead, she woke up early and helped with breakfast. She greeted Emily with a smile. She asked, "Auntie, can I help you with that?" When Emily carried heavy things, Emily was confused. One morning, while Emily was sweeping the compound, Sandra came outside with a broom too. "Let me help you, Auntie," Sandra said. Emily stopped. "You don't have to call me that." Sandra smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. "But you deserve my respect. You were here first. This is your home. I'm just a guest." Emily's throat tightened. No one had spoken to her with such kindness in a long time. "Thank you," Emily whispered. From that day, something began to bloom. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, Felix left the house early. He said he had business to handle in Lekki. Emily was in the kitchen preparing jollof rice for lunch. The aroma of tomatoes and spices filled the air. Sandra walked in, holding a small package wrapped in newspaper. "Auntie," she said shyly, "I bought something for you at the market yesterday." Emily turned around, surprised. "For me?" Sandra nodded and handed her the package. Emily unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a beautiful Ankara head tie, blue and gold patterns. the kind Emily had admired at the market but never bought for herself. Her eyes filled with tears. "Sandra, why?" Sandra's voice was soft. "Because I want this house to be comfortable for me. And it can only be comfortable if you and I are friends." Emily looked at this young woman, this stranger who was supposed to be her enemy, and she saw something she didn't expect. She saw a sister. "Thank you," Emily whispered, hugging the fabric to her chest. "Thank you so much." Sandra smiled. "You're welcome, Auntie." "Please," Emily said, "call me Emily." But Sandra shook her head. "No, you will always be Auntie to me. You will always have my respect." That morning they cooked together. They laughed together. They shared stories about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Emily learned that Sandra came from a poor family in Ajagunle, that she had dropped out of school to help her mother sell vegetables, that she agreed to marry Felix because her family needed money. "I didn't know he already had a wife," Sandra confessed. "He only told me 3 days before the wedding. By then, everything was already arranged. My family had already collected money." I couldn't say no. Emily's heart broke for her. "I'm sorry," Emily said. Sandra shook her head. "Don't be sorry for me. Be sorry for him. He thought bringing me here would make you suffer. But I will not be a weapon against you." From that moment, their friendship became stronger than blood. Felix noticed it and he hated it. He came home every evening expecting to see coldness, competition, 2 women fighting over him like dogs over a bone. Instead, he found them laughing. He found them cooking together, braiding each other's hair, sitting in the parlor sharing jokes while drinking zobo. One afternoon, he came home early and heard music coming from the kitchen. He walked quietly to the door and peeped inside. Emily and Sandra were dancing, shaking their waists to a high-life song on the radio. Flour on their hands, smiles on their faces, joy in their movements. Felix's face turned red, his jaw tightened. This was not the plan. He had brought Sandra to punish Emily, to make her feel small, to teach her that she was replaceable. But instead they had become friends. Worse than friends. They had become a team, a force. And he was the outsider. He slammed the door and stormed to the parlor. He sat down heavily on the couch, breathing through his nose like an angry bull. The music in the kitchen stopped. Moments later, Emily and Sandra came out, still smiling. "Oh, you're back early," Emily said casually. "Food will be ready soon." Felix said nothing. Sandra greeted him politely. "Good afternoon, sir." He ignored her. The women exchanged glances and went back to the kitchen. Felix sat there, hands shaking with rage. This was not how it was supposed to be. Days passed, then weeks. The more Emily and Sandra bonded, the more Felix changed. He became bitter, silent. He stopped talking at the dinner table. He barely looked at either of them. Sometimes Emily caught him staring at them with something in his eyes she couldn't name. Was it anger, jealousy, fear? She didn't know. She didn't care. For the first time in years, Emily felt happy. She had a friend, a sister, someone who understood her pain without her having to explain. One evening they sat on the veranda watching the sun go down. "Auntie," Sandra said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you stay with him?" Emily was silent for a long time. "Because," she finally said, "leaving takes courage I don't have yet, but staying with you here, makes it easier to breathe." Sandra reached over and held Emily's hand. "Then we breathe together," Sandra said. Emily squeezed her hand back. Inside the house, through the window, Felix watched them. His hands were trembling. His plan had failed. Worse than failed, it had backfired. He had wanted to break Emily. Instead, he had given her the one thing he feared most, an ally. The breaking point came on a Thursday. Felix had been silent for days, watching, waiting. His anger was building like water behind a dam. That afternoon, Emily and Sandra were in the kitchen preparing soup. They were laughing about something. Emily couldn't even remember what, but their laughter was loud, joyful, free. Felix was in the parlor pretending to watch television. But he wasn't watching anything. He was listening to them. Every giggle was like a knife in his chest. Every word they shared felt like betrayal. He stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen door, stood there watching them through the crack. They didn't see him. Sandra was stirring the pot. Emily was blending pepper. Both of them wore matching Ankara aprons Emily had sewn. They looked like real sisters. Felix's blood boiled. He turned and walked back to the parlor, sat down. His breathing was heavy. Then he shouted, "Sandra, come here now." The kitchen went silent. Emily and Sandra looked at each other. Sandra wiped her hands on her apron. "I'm coming," she said quietly. She walked into the parlor. Felix was standing now. His face was dark. His fists were clenched. Emily followed behind, standing at the kitchen door, watching. "So this is how you spend your time now?" Felix's voice was low. "Instead of competing for my love and attention, the best you can do is befriend your competitor." Sandra kept her head down. "I'm sorry, sir." "Shut up," Felix's voice exploded. "Since you won't obey me, I'll teach you a lesson." He raised his hand. The same hand he had raised on Emily many times before. The same hand that had made Emily flinch, cry. But Sandra was not Emily. Everything happened in seconds. Felix's hand was in the air. Time seemed to move like honey, slow, thick, heavy. Emily's heart stopped. She had seen this before. She knew what came next, the slap, the pain, the tears. She opened her mouth to scream, to beg, to do something. But before any sound could leave her throat, Sandra moved. Her hand shot up like lightning. She caught Felix's wrist in midair. Her grip was iron. Felix's eyes went wide with shock. What are you?" He didn't finish. Sandra twisted his arm, not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to make him understand. Then, with a strength that seemed impossible for her size, she lifted him. Actually, lifted him off the ground, and threw him. Felix's body flew backward. He crashed into the center table. Wood cracked. Glass shattered. His body hit the floor with a sound that shook the entire house. Thud. The room went silent. Emily stood frozen at the kitchen door, her hand over her mouth. Felix lay on the floor, surrounded by splintered wood. His eyes were huge. His mouth hung open. No words came out. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. Sandra stood over him. Her face was calm, too calm, like the sea before a storm. "If you ever touch either of us again," she said slowly, coldly, "I will teach you a lesson you will never forget in a hurry." Her voice was quiet, but every word landed like a hammer. Felix tried to speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came. He looked like a fish pulled from water, gasping for air. He tried to get up. His hands slipped on the broken glass. He struggled, fell, struggled again. Finally, he managed to stand. His legs were shaking. His face had gone from red to white. He looked at Sandra, then at Emily, then back at Sandra. Then he did something Emily had never seen him do. He looked down. He couldn't hold their eyes. Without a word, Felix stumbled to the bedroom. The door slammed behind him. The sound echoed through the house like thunder. Emily's legs finally remembered how to move. She rushed to Sandra. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Sandra looked at her hands. They were steady, calm. "I'm fine, Auntie." But where did you learn?" Sandra smiled sadly. "Growing up in Nejigunle, you learn to protect yourself. My brothers taught me. They said a woman should never be helpless. Emily stared at her, this young woman who looked so soft, so gentle, but inside she was made of steel. "He could have hurt you," Emily whispered. "No," Sandra shook her head. "He could have tried, but I would not let him succeed." They stood there in the scattered parlor, glass everywhere, the table destroyed, the air still thick with shock. Then Emily did something that surprised even herself. She laughed, not a small laugh, a big laugh, a laugh that came from deep in her belly, a laugh that carried 6 years of pain and fear, and finally, freedom. Sandra looked at her, surprised. Then she started laughing too. They laughed until tears ran down their faces. They laughed until their stomachs hurt. They laughed until the heaviness in the house felt a little bit lighter. Felix did not come out of the bedroom for the rest of that day, or the next day. When he finally emerged on the third day, he was a different man. His shoulders were bent, his voice was quiet, his eyes stayed on the floor. "Good morning," he mumbled when he saw them at breakfast. Emily and Sandra replied politely, nothing more. He ate his food in silence. He didn't complain about the salt. He didn't complain about anything. When he finished, he washed his own plate, something he had never done before. Then he left for work without another word. The days that followed were strange. Felix stopped shouting, stopped complaining, stopped making demands. When Emily and Sandra cooked together, he said nothing. When they laughed, he walked away quietly. Whenever he saw them together, his eyes would drop to the ground, like a dog that had been beaten. But Emily noticed something else: fear. Felix was afraid, not of Sandra, not of being taught a lesson. He was afraid of something bigger. He was afraid of losing control. For years, Felix had ruled this home with anger. He believed he could do whatever he wanted, say whatever he wanted, hurt whoever he wanted, and no one would stop him. But Sandra had done what Emily couldn't do alone. She had shown him that his power was an illusion, that respect earned through fear is not respect at all, that control built on fear is a house built on sand, and when the wind blows, it falls. 1 month later, Emily was folding clothes on the veranda when Felix came and sat beside her. She tensed, old habits. But he didn't raise his voice. He didn't complain. He just sat there, silent, looking at his hands. Finally, he spoke. "Emily." "Yes," she answered. He stopped, swallowed hard. "I was wrong." Emily's hands stopped moving. She looked at him. His face was different. The hardness was gone. What remained looked tired, broken. "I brought Sandra here to punish you," he continued quietly. "I wanted you to suffer. I wanted you to feel small and worthless. I thought it would make you respect me." Emily said nothing, just waited. "But I was the fool," Felix whispered. "I was the one who didn't understand respect at all. My friends had told me this was the only way to prove I am a man. Even when you did nothing wrong, now see where it landed me." Tears ran down his face. "I'm sorry," he said. "A man should never raise his hands against a woman, neither should a woman." Emily looked at him, the man who had promised her forever under the Lagos sky, the man who had slowly turned their home into a prison, and she felt nothing. No anger, no joy, no forgiveness yet, just emptiness. "I hear you," she said quietly, "but sorry is just a word. Show me with your actions if you mean it." Felix nodded slowly. "I will try." He stood up and walked away. Emily went back to folding clothes, but her hands were shaking, not from fear, from the feeling that felt like the first breath after being underwater for too long. That evening, Emily and Sandra sat together. "Do you think he's really changed?" Sandra asked. Emily was quiet for a moment. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I've changed, and that's what matters." Sandra smiled. We both changed. Yes, Emily agreed. We did. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky. Felix had wanted to teach Emily a lesson about respect, but life had taught him something different. You cannot force respect. You cannot demand it. You cannot buy it or beat it into existence. Respect is earned through kindness, through honesty, through treating others the way you want to be treated. Felix had gone about it the wrong way without noticing, but life has a way of returning what you plant, and his harvest was bitter. 2 months later, Felix made a decision. He waited until Emily was alone in the kitchen. Sandra had gone to the market. "Emily," he said quietly, "I want to divorce Sandra." Emily's hands stopped moving in the dishwater. She turned slowly. "What?" Felix looked uncomfortable, ashamed. I can't live with her. Not after what she did. Every time I see her, I remember—" "Remember what?" Emily's voice was calm. "Remember that she defended herself. Remember that she refused to be your victim. It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Emily dried her hands slowly. "You brought her here to punish me. Now you want to throw her away because she didn't play the role you assigned her." Felix shifted his weight. "I'll give her money. She can go back to her family. I'll take care of everything." "No." The word hung in the air like thunder. "What do you mean, no?" Emily looked at her husband, really looked at him. The man who had tried to break her. The same man was now asking for her permission to throw away the best thing that had happened to her in years. "Sandra goes nowhere," Emily said firmly. "She is my sister now. And if you want her to leave, then I will leave too." Felix's eyes went wide. You would leave me because of her?" Emily smiled. "Yes, I will, and I'm staying because of her." She stepped closer to him. "Felix, you brought Sandra here thinking she would be a weapon against me, but she became my shield, my friend, my sister, and I will not abandon her just because your ego can't handle what happened." "But people will talk," Felix said weakly. "A man living with 2 wives when one of them—" "When one of them what?" Emily challenged. "When one of them showed you that respect cannot be beaten into existence? When one of them taught you that power built on fear is no power at all? What were you thinking?" Felix said nothing. "Sandra stays," Emily said with finality, "and you will treat her with respect. Not because you're afraid of her, but because she deserves it." Felix looked at the floor. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay," he whispered. That evening, Emily told Sandra what had happened. Sandra's eyes filled with tears. You chose me?" "I chose us," Emily corrected gently. "I chose sisterhood. I chose the woman who showed me I didn't have to stay broken." Sandra hugged her tight. "Thank you, Auntie. Thank you." "Stop calling me Auntie," Emily said, laughing through her own tears. "We're sisters now. Equals." "No," Sandra said softly. "You will always be first. You were here first. This is your home. I'm just grateful to share it with you." Emily pulled back, looking at her. "Sandra, you don't have to—" "I want to," Sandra insisted. "Not because I'm afraid. Not because anyone is forcing me, but because I respect you. Because you earned it. You are a good woman, Auntie." Emily's throat tightened with emotion. "Then we build together," she said, "as sisters, as equals in everything that matters." Sandra smiled. "Together." 3 months later, something unexpected happened. Felix came home from work and found both women sitting in the living room, waiting for him. "We need to talk," Emily said. Felix's stomach tightened. "About what?" "About our future," Sandra added. Felix sat down slowly, cautiously. Emily spoke first. "Felix, for years I was just your wife. I cooked, I cleaned, I made myself smaller and smaller trying to please you." "Emily, I'm trying to change. Let me finish." Her voice was kind but firm. "I was so busy being what you wanted that I forgot who I was." "What I wanted?" "What I could become." She paused. "I want to go back to school," Emily said. "I want to finish my degree. I want to start a business. I want to become more than just a wife." Felix blinked. "School? But you're 32. And," Emily's eyebrow raised, "is there an age limit on dreams?" "No, Felix stumbled. "What kind of business?" "Catering," Emily said, her eyes bright. "I'm a good cook. I can make it into something real. Something mine." Sandra leaned forward. "And I want to get my certifications. Emily, is teaching me how to cook Nigerian dishes properly. But I also want to learn event planning." "We could work together." Felix looked between them. "You want to start a business? Together?" "Yes," both women said at the same time. Felix was quiet for a long moment. "How much do you need?" Emily and Sandra exchanged glances. They hadn't expected this. "We're not asking for charity," Emily said carefully. "We're asking for investment. We'll pay you back." Felix shook his head slowly. "You don't have to pay me back." "Yes, we do," Sandra insisted, "because this is ours. We would build it ourselves. We just need a starting point." Felix looked at these two women, women he had tried to control, women he had underestimated, women who were now asking him to help them rise. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll sponsor you. Both of you. School fees, business capital, whatever you need." "Why?" Emily asked suspiciously. Felix's jaw worked. Because I owe you. Both of you. I tried to break you, Emily, and for some reasons I used Sandra as the weapon. The least I can do is help you build something good from the ashes of my mistake." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. Emily nodded slowly. "Then we have a deal." The next 2 years were hard. Emily went back to university, studying business management while running her growing catering company. Sandra studied event planning while helping Emily with orders. They worked together, pushed each other, encouraged each other. When Emily wanted to quit because an exam was too hard, Sandra stayed up with her, making tea and testing her on flashcards. When Sandra doubted herself because a client was difficult, Emily reminded her, "You threw a grown man across a room. You can handle one angry customer." They laughed, they cried, they built. Felix watched from the sidelines. He went to work, he came home, he ate the meals they prepared when they had time. He never complained. Sometimes, late at night, he would hear them in the living room, going over business plans or studying together. Their laughter would drift through the house, and he would feel something strange. Not jealousy, not anger, something closer to pride. These women, who had every reason to hate him, were building something beautiful together, and he was privileged to witness it. 2 years later, Emily and Sandra stood at their new event space. "Emily and Sandra's Events and Catering," the sign read. Their first major contract. A wedding for 200 people. They had done it. Emily stood in the middle of the empty hall, looking around with tears in her eyes. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Sandra came and stood beside her. "No, Auntie. You did it. You're the one who had the courage to choose me, to choose us." "We did it," Emily corrected. "Together." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Emily spoke, her voice strong and clear. "Sisterhood, womanhood, motherhood, and all the hood are proud of us." Sandra turned to her, eyes shining. She raised her fist in the air. "Power," she said. Not shouted, not whispered, just spoken. Like a fact, like a promise, like a truth. Emily raised her fist, too. "Power," she echoed. They stood there, two women who were supposed to be enemies, two women who had become sisters, two women who had taken pain and turned it into purpose. And in that moment, they understood something profound. The greatest revenge is not destruction, it's rising. Felix never became a perfect husband, but he became a better one. He learned to ask instead of demand. He learned to listen instead of command. He learned that a man's strength is not measured by who he can control, but by who he can empower. Sandra never disrespected Emily, not because she had to, but because she chose to. She honored Emily as first wife, not out of tradition, but out of love. And Emily never forgot what Sandra had done for her, not just throwing Felix across the room, but showing her that she didn't have to accept less than she deserved. Together they built an empire, not just of business, but of sisterhood. And every woman who worked for them, every girl who saw their story, learned something powerful. The chains that bind us are often other women, but the wings that lift us, those are other women too. So choose your sisters wisely. Build them up, stand with them, and watch what happens when women refuse to be enemies. Watch what happens when women choose power over pride. Watch what happens when women say, "We will not fight each other. We will fight for each other." That's when the real revolution begins. Thank you for watching. Please support me by liking, subscribing, and sharing. See you in the next one.